Ambassador Sarah Reyes stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Horizon, watching the massive space station Eternal Harmony grow larger against the backdrop of swirling cosmic gases. The structure was breathtaking, a marvel of engineering that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, with crystalline spires and gravity-defying architecture that seemed to flow like liquid metal frozen in time. Magnificent, isn't it? Dr. Marcus Chen joined her, his eyes wide with wonder. As the delegation's xenobiologist, he'd spent years theorizing about alien biology. Now he would finally see living specimens. More than I imagined, Sarah admitted, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform. And more terrifying. Everything we say and do in the next week will shape humanity's place among the stars for centuries. The ship's communication system chimed. Ambassador, this is Commander Jackson. We're receiving docking instructions, but they're unusual. Sarah frowned. Unusual how? They're requesting we power down all systems except life support before approach, and they're clearing a 3-kilometer radius around our designated dock. Standard procedure apparently requires only 1 kilometer. Professor Hernandez looked up from his cultural briefing materials. Perhaps it's a safety protocol for first contact species. The Concordat has been observing Earth for decades. They must know we're still adapting to interstellar navigation standards. The Horizon followed instructions, approaching with minimal power while the massive docking bay emptied of other vessels. Through the viewports, Sarah noticed alien ships giving them an extraordinarily wide berth, their pilots visibly adjusting course when the human vessel came within visual range. "Is it just me?" Commander Jackson murmured. "Or are they avoiding us like we're carrying a plague?" The docking procedure completed with mechanical precision. As the airlock cycled, Sarah addressed her team one final time. "Remember, we represent not just our governments but our entire species. We've prepared for this moment for years. Whatever cultural differences we encounter, approach them with respect and curiosity." The airlock doors slid open to reveal a cavernous reception hall adorned with symbols from hundreds of worlds. A delegation of 7 different species waited at a carefully measured distance, their postures communicating what Sarah's cultural training suggested was formal politeness. But something else lingered beneath the surface. The lead delegate, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin and 4 upper limbs, stepped forward exactly 3 meters before stopping. "Ambassador Reyes of Earth, I am High Counselor Vexalia of the Galactic Concordat. On behalf of 500 sentient species, we welcome humanity to the community of stars." Though the translator rendered the words perfectly, Sarah noted the subtle body language of the security personnel flanking the greeting party, the way they focused on the humans' hands, the subtle adjustments of their posture when any human moved suddenly, the barely perceptible activation of personal shield devices that rippled across their forms like oil on water. They were afraid. Not cautious or wary as one might expect with newcomers, but genuinely, viscerally afraid. As the formal procession began, Sarah overheard a whispered conversation between 2 insectoid delegates, their translator devices not quite muted enough. Confirmed Deathworlders. Forward-facing eyes. Look at their teeth when they smile. Predator morphology. All of them. Central Command says they still have territorial wars on their homeworld. Imagine what they could do here if provoked. Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile while making a mental note. Something was very wrong with how these advanced species perceived humanity, and understanding that perception would be crucial to their mission success. The Grand Reception Hall of Eternal Harmony bustled with activity as representatives from over 500 worlds mingled in their formal diplomatic attire. Floating light orbs cast a soft glow over the gathering, while synthesized music, designed to be pleasant across multiple auditory perception ranges, drifted through the air. Ambassador Sarah Reyes navigated the crowd with practiced grace, noting how the sea of aliens seemed to part before her, creating an invisible bubble of space wherever the humans walked. Each time she approached a group, conversations faltered, and postures stiffened. "Is it just me?" Commander Jackson whispered, Or does everyone stop talking when we get close? It's not just you, Sarah confirmed. Something about us is making them uncomfortable. Across the hall, Dr. Marcus Chen found himself alone at a refreshment station, examining the array of oddly colored beverages. A small, amphibious being with bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its skin approached, wobbling slightly. "You're from Earth," the alien exclaimed through its translator. "The Death World." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Death World. That's an interesting way to describe our home." The alien, clearly intoxicated on whatever it had been consuming, leaned closer. "Everyone knows. Planet Earth. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic oxygen levels, radiation from exposed star, and constant geological instability. Only predators survive such conditions." "I wouldn't call us predators," Marcus began, but the alien continued. "Your species entered Galactic database when first radio signals detected. Classified immediately. Apex predators." The alien's luminescence pulsed faster. Forward-facing eyes for hunting. Teeth for tearing flesh. Pack hunting behaviors still evident in social structures. Persistent pursuit predation. Most terrifying hunting method in known galaxy. Before Marcus could respond, a taller member of the same species hurried over, apologizing profusely before guiding the intoxicated diplomat away. However, the encounter left Marcus troubled. He tapped his communication implant. "Ambassador, I think we need to talk." Meanwhile, Commander Jackson had positioned herself near a refreshment area, observing the security protocols. She noticed how the station's security officers tracked human movements with particular attention. When a dispute erupted between two delegates, one with tentacles, the other with multiple eye stalks, the situation quickly escalated to shoving. Without thinking, Jackson stepped between them, gently but firmly separating the combatants with minimal force. "Gentlemen, or the appropriate honorific, perhaps we can resolve this diplomatically. This is, after all, a peace summit." The aliens froze, staring at her in what appeared to be shock. The security team, which had been moving to intervene, halted their approach, watching the human with what could only be described as horrified fascination. One security officer whispered to another, their translator not quite muted enough. "Did you see how easily it subdued both of them? Minimal exertion. Precise application of force. This confirms combat capability assessment." The incident lasted mere seconds, but Jackson noticed several attendees discreetly recording the interaction with their devices. By evening's end, security footage of the human effortlessly breaking up the altercation had spread throughout the station's networks. When the human delegation regrouped in their quarters, they compared notes on their strange encounters. "They're calling Earth a death world," Marcus explained. "Apparently, we're classified as apex predators in their database." "That explains the excessive security," Jackson noted. "They're afraid of us." Sarah considered this information. "We need to understand exactly what they're afraid of before we can address it. Tomorrow's first council session will be crucial. If they see us as predators, we need to show them we're more than our evolutionary history." What none of them realized was that at that very moment, the Conquests Security Council was holding an emergency meeting about the predator problem, reviewing footage of Jackson's display of dominance, and debating whether humans were too dangerous to include in galactic society. "Cultural exchange is the foundation of diplomatic relations," Dr. Marcus Chen explained to Ambassador Reyes as they prepared for the presentation. "If they fear us because of misunderstandings about human physiology, then education is our best approach." The amphitheater aboard Eternal Harmony was designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environmental needs. Transparent environmental bubbles housed aquatic species, while varying gravity platforms supported those from high or low G worlds. Despite the 300-seat capacity, only about half the available spaces were filled, notably those farthest from the stage. "Welcome," Marcus began, activating the holographic display. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen, xenobiologist from Earth, Today I'd like to share some basic information about human physiology to foster better understanding between our species. The presentation began innocuously with Earth's planetary statistics. As Marcus described Earth's gravity, 1.3 times higher than the galactic average for homeworlds. Atmospheric pressure and temperature ranges, murmurs rippled through the audience. The display showed humans living in environments from the Sahara Desert to Antarctic research stations. Humans have adapted to survive in temperature ranges from approximately -50 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius with appropriate protection, Marcus explained. Our baseline comfort zone is between 20-25 degrees Celsius, but with minimal technology, we can function effectively outside these parameters. Several delegates exchanged alarmed glances, one serpentine being slithered toward an exit. Unaware of the growing discomfort, Marcus continued, humans are persistence predators by evolutionary history. While many species evolved for speed or ambush tactics, humans developed extraordinary endurance. To demonstrate, some humans participate in activities called marathons, running continuously for over 42 kilometers. The hologram showed footage of marathon runners crossing a finish line after hours of exertion. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. 3 more delegates departed hurriedly. Perhaps most interesting is our omnivorous adaptability, Marcus continued enthusiastically. Humans can consume a wide variety of organic matter. Some substances that are toxic to many species are actually pleasurable for humans. He displayed his morning coffee. This beverage contains caffeine, a neurostimulant that many human cultures consume daily. Similarly, capsaicin. He held up a small red pepper, causes a burning sensation that many humans find enjoyable in food. Professor Hernandez, monitoring the audience reactions, nudged Commander Jackson. I don't think this is going well, he whispered. Look at their posture changes. Indeed, many aliens were displaying what their cultural briefings identified as extreme stress responses, color changes, extended defense membranes, and pheromone releases that made the air increasingly pungent. Oblivious, Marcus reached the medical portion of his presentation. Humans possess remarkable regenerative capabilities. Minor wounds heal completely, and we can function effectively despite significant injuries. The display showed medical imagery of a human with a compound fracture, continuing to walk with assistance. With modern medical technology, humans can even survive the loss of limbs or major organs. We can donate a kidney or portion of our liver while still alive, and the presentation abruptly terminated as station security overrode the system, citing a technical malfunction. By then, nearly 2/3 of the audience had vacated the amphitheater. That evening, Professor Hernandez accessed the station's communication records through the diplomatic terminal. Encrypted transmissions to homeworlds have increased 300% since our presentation, he reported grimly. Whatever they're saying about us, they're saying it urgently. So much for educational outreach, Commander Jackson sighed. We tried to reassure them, and instead we just confirmed their worst fears. Ambassador Reyes stared thoughtfully at the starscape outside their viewport. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. We're trying to convince them we're not dangerous by their standards. Maybe we need to help them understand that being dangerous doesn't mean being a threat. Ambassador Reyes was awakened by the wail of emergency sirens. The artificial gravity on Eternal Harmony fluctuated wildly. One moment pressing her against her bed with double force, the next leaving her floating helplessly toward the ceiling. Status report, she shouted, struggling to reach her communication implant. Commander Jackson's voice came through, tense but controlled. Station-wide gravity failure. Multiple hull breaches reported in the lower quadrants. We're receiving distress calls from at least 6 different sectors. Casualties. Unknown, but likely. The Merebi delegation was in a 0G adapted section that suddenly shifted to 3G. Their physiology isn't designed to withstand such pressure. Sarah made a decision instantly. Mobilize our team. Full emergency protocols. Within minutes, the human delegation assembled in the corridor, magnetic boots activated to stabilize their movement. Unlike many panicking aliens floating helplessly through the hallways, the humans had trained extensively for zero-G emergencies. Dr. Chen, coordinate with any medical personnel you can find. Professor Hernandez, we need to access the station's environmental controls. Commander Jackson, with me, we're heading to the primary structural failure. As they navigated the chaotic corridors, they passed scenes of increasing desperation. Beings evolved for specific gravity conditions struggled to function, while atmospheric mixtures designed for particular species began to intermix through damaged barrier fields. In the central promenade, they found a critical situation. A support beam had collapsed, pinning several Chorvian delegates. Delicate, crystal-like beings who communicated through light patterns across their translucent bodies. The beam was too heavy for the station's service drones to lift, and the Chorvians were cracking under the pressure. Without hesitation, Commander Jackson positioned herself beneath the beam. On my mark, she instructed the hovering service drones. With a grunt of exertion, she lifted the massive structure just enough for the drones to stabilize it with their propulsion fields. "Get them out," she shouted, veins standing out on her forehead as she supported the weight that should have required hydraulic assistance. Security cameras recorded everything. The human female supporting a load that station records would later calculate at 437 kilograms in fluctuating gravity conditions for nearly 3 minutes. Meanwhile, Professor Hernandez had reached the Environmental Control Center, finding it abandoned by panicked technicians. He quickly assessed the complex alien systems. "They've designed these controls with 17 redundancies," he muttered to himself, "but no single emergency override." With rapid-fire commands, he began rerouting power and stabilizing life support systems throughout the station. In the medical bay, Dr. Chen organized triage stations, his medical translator working overtime as he instructed alien doctors in treatment protocols for mixed-species casualties. When a young fellarin, a feline species with delicate respiratory systems, began suffocating as atmospheric pressures change, Chen performed an emergency procedure using modified equipment, saving the being's life with techniques no alien doctor would have attempted. 6 hours later, gravity and environmental systems stabilized. The human delegation reconvened in their quarters, exhausted but satisfied with their emergency response. However, Sarah's expression remained troubled as she reviewed station security logs. "This wasn't an accident," she said, displaying evidence of deliberate sabotage. The gravity modulators were manually overridden from this terminal. She forwarded her findings to the Concordat Security Council, unaware that the evidence of human investigative capabilities, their pattern recognition, deductive reasoning, and familiarity with sabotage techniques would only intensify the growing fear. The Council's response was immediate and alarming. The human delegation was requested to remain in their quarters under protective supervision until a full investigation could be completed. Protective supervision. Commander Jackson repeated skeptically as armed security drones positioned themselves outside their doors. "That's a diplomatic way of saying we're under arrest." Ambassador Rice paced the confines of their quarters, the holographic chronometer indicating it had been 18 hours since their confinement began. Outside, the security drones maintained unwavering vigilance, their optical sensors tracking every movement visible through the transparent sections of the walls. "They're not just guarding us," Commander Jackson observed. "They're studying us. Look how the drones reposition whenever we approach different areas." Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "Our quarters have become a zoo exhibit." Professor Hernandez looked up from his terminal. "I've been analyzing our communication restrictions. There's a subtle electromagnetic field dampening our transmissions, but it fluctuates on a regular cycle. There's a 3-second window every 17 minutes when the field weakens, presumably for system diagnostics." "Can we exploit that?" Sarah asked. Hernandez smiled thinly. "I already have. I've established remote access to the station's information network through that gap. Limited, but..." He gestured to his screen where security footage played silently. "I can see what's happening elsewhere." The footage showed the Concordat Council chamber, where representatives from 24 major species sat in a circular arrangement. High Counselor Vexalia stood at the center, addressing the assembly. "We need audio," Jackson said. "Working on it," Hernandez replied, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Moments later, translated voices emerged from the terminal. "Evolutionary path incompatible with galactic peace," Vexalia was saying. "The evidence is irrefutable." Their response to the gravity sabotage, while ostensibly helpful, demonstrates precisely what makes them dangerous. A bulbous being with multiple eye stalks raised an appendage. The Terran female lifted 437 kilograms unassisted. This exceeds the strength-to-mass ratio of any sentient species in the Concordat database. More concerning, added a crystalline entity, was their pattern recognition and problem-solving during crisis. The male accessing our environmental systems displayed intuitive understanding of alien technology that should have been incomprehensible. Their medical techniques were equally disturbing. A floating, jellyfish-like being contributed. The xenobiologist performed invasive procedures with minimal equipment. His species appears comfortable with actions other sentients would find psychologically traumatic. High Counselor Vexalia's forearms spread in a gesture of emphasis. The humans represent an evolutionary path most civilized species found too brutal to achieve sentience. While we developed technology to overcome our physical limitations, they developed as predators who became philosophers. Their history records constant warfare, yet they've somehow avoided self-destruction. The council chamber fell silent as security footage played on a large display, showing Commander Jackson lifting the beam, Dr. Chen performing emergency surgery, Professor Hernandez rapidly reconfiguring alien systems, and Ambassador Rice discovering the sabotage evidence. Two options remain, Vexalia continued. Permanent quarantine of Earth, restricting them to their home system indefinitely, or accelerated integration under strict oversight, attempting to civilize them before they realize their potential power in the galactic community. In their quarters, the human delegation watched in stunned silence. "They're afraid of us because we're strong?" Dr. Chen asked incredulously. "No," Sarah replied, understanding dawning. "They're afraid because we evolved differently. Most sentient species apparently developed intelligence as prey animals, using technology to compensate for physical vulnerability. We're predators who developed empathy and cooperation alongside our strength." Commander Jackson stood abruptly. "We need to get out of here and address this council directly. They're making decisions about humanity's future based on fear and misunderstanding." "Agreed," Sarah said, determination hardening her features. "Professor Hernandez, how good are our magnetic boots at scaling walls in zero gravity?" The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for Commander Jackson's shoulders as she led the human delegation through the station's service tunnels. Professor Hernandez had identified a route to the council chambers by accessing the station's architectural database, a feat that would have further alarmed the Concordat had they known. "Security drones at the next junction," Jackson whispered, checking the modified scanner Dr. Chen had improvised from their medical equipment. "3 of them." "Can we go around?" Ambassador Rice asked. "No time," Jackson replied. "The council votes on Earth's status in 20 minutes. Dr. Chen removed a small canister from his medical kit. "This is a synthetic pheromone compound I was studying. It mimics the Aluri stress response. The drones should prioritize investigating the source." He rolled the canister down the adjoining corridor. Within seconds, the security drones redirected to investigate the apparent distress signal, leaving their path clear. "Remind me never to underestimate a xenobiologist," Jackson muttered as they continued. When they reached the council chamber's service entrance, Sarah turned to her team. "Let me go in alone first. A full breach will just confirm their fears about human aggression." Before they could argue, she slipped through the doorway and stepped calmly into the chamber, hands raised in the Concordat's universal gesture of peaceful intent. The council froze in shock. Security drones immediately surrounded her, weapons poised. High Counselor Vexalia, Sarah said evenly, I request the right to address this assembly before you vote on humanity's future. How did you? Vexalia's luminescent skin pulsed with alarm patterns. The containment fields were impressive but insufficient, Sarah finished. However, I haven't come to threaten or intimidate. I've come to understand. She lowered her hand slowly. You fear us. I need to know why, so we can address your concerns honestly. Something in her calm demeanor made Vexalia pause. After a moment of silent communication with other council members, the High Counselor gestured for the drones to stand down. You may speak, Ambassador Reyes. Sarah took a deep breath. I've heard your deliberations. You call us predators, and you're right. We evolved from pursued hunters. You see our physical capabilities and problem-solving as threats, but you're missing something fundamental about humanity. She walked slowly to the center of the chamber, noting how the delegates leaned away. The same evolutionary path that made us strong also taught us something crucial: cooperation. We learned that we achieve more together than alone, that diversity of thought leads to better outcomes. Sarah activated the chamber's display system, showing images from Earth's history, humans of different cultures working together, caring for the ill, rebuilding after disasters. Yes, we can be dangerous. Our history contains violence that would horrify you. But our greatest strength isn't physical. It's our capacity to empathize with others unlike ourselves. We developed this precisely because we evolved as social predators who needed to understand both prey and pack members. She met Vexalia's compound eyes directly. You've been watching us since we arrived. You've seen us use our predator traits not for aggression, but to help others during crisis. That is the true nature of humanity. Not the physical capabilities that frighten you, but how we choose to use them. The chamber remained silent, the delegates' postures now showing what the humans recognized as thoughtful consideration rather than fear. I'm not asking you to trust us blindly, Sarah continued. I'm offering complete transparency, unrestricted access to Earth's history, both our atrocities and our triumphs. We hide nothing of our flawed past. Judge us not by what we are capable of, but by what we choose to do with those capabilities. Vexalia's skin rippled with complex patterns before she spoke. Your willingness to acknowledge your species' capacity for violence is unexpected. Most would deny or minimize such traits. Denial serves no one. Sarah replied simply. We know what we are. We also know what we can become, either alone or as part of something greater alongside you. A test. Ambassador Reyes studied the proposal on the holographic display. 3 days had passed since her address to the council, and while the humans were no longer confined to their quarters, the tension aboard Eternal Harmony remained palpable. High Counselor Vexalia's 4 arms moved in synchronized patterns as she explained. The Concordat believes in empirical evidence. Ambassador, your words were compelling, but words alone cannot overcome eons of evolutionary instinct. We propose a series of simulations to observe human behavior under controlled conditions. Commander Jackson frowned. You want to put us in a laboratory? Not exactly, Vexalia clarified. You will participate in emergency response simulations alongside other species. Your performance will be evaluated by independent observers. Dr. Chen exchanged glances with Professor Hernandez. Something felt off about the proposal, but they couldn't identify what. We accept, Sarah decided after a moment's consideration. When do we begin? Immediately, Vexalia replied. The first simulation is already prepared. The human delegation was escorted to a section of the station designated for training exercises. The scenario seemed straightforward. A simulated hull breach had caused environmental systems failure in a nursery containing eggs and juvenile specimens from 14 different species. Mixed species teams would attempt to stabilize conditions and ensure the safety of the young. Remember, Sarah murmured to her team, we're being evaluated on how we work with others, not just our effectiveness. The simulation began with realistic alarms blaring. The humans joined their assigned teams, focusing on collaboration rather than taking charge. Dr. Chen found himself paired with a nervous Xylaxian embryologist, working to maintain precise temperature gradients for a clutch of gelatinous eggs. These require 0.2-degree precision, the Xylaxian explained, appendages trembling. Too warm, they develop neural defects. Too cold, respiratory failure. The environmental controls continued to deteriorate, with cascading system failures that seemed unusually complex for a training exercise. When toxic gas began leaking into the chamber, Dr. Chen noticed his partner struggling to breathe while still attempting to protect the eggs. Without hesitation, Chen placed his emergency respirator over the Xylaxian's breathing apparatus. "I can tolerate the toxins longer than you," he explained, already feeling his lungs burn. "Focus on the eggs." Across the chamber, Commander Jackson was helping evacuate juvenile aquatic creatures, carrying 3 heavy water containers simultaneously while guiding younger aliens to safety. Professor Hernandez had bypassed the standard controls entirely, rewiring systems to maintain life support with increasingly limited power. As the simulation reached critical failure, the humans found themselves making increasingly difficult choices, always prioritizing the safety of others over efficiency or self-preservation. When Dr. Chen noticed a clutch of eggs about to fall from a destabilized shelf, he lunged across the room, catching the container but exposing himself to a full blast of the toxic gas. He collapsed, still cradling the eggs protectively as medical teams rushed in to end the simulation. Only it wasn't a simulation. As Chen regained consciousness in the medical bay, he found Ambassador Reyes speaking with High Counselor Vexalia. "You deliberately placed us in actual danger," Sarah was saying, her voice controlled but firm. "Those weren't simulations, they were real emergencies occurring throughout the station." Vexalia's skin pulsed with patterns that the humans now recognized as indicating regret. "Yes, the Council required unfiltered data on human behavior under genuine stress. Had we informed you, your responses might have been performative. You risked lives, including your own young, to test us." Commander Jackson asked incredulously. "We calculated acceptable risk parameters," another counselor explained. "But we underestimated the cascading nature of the failures and overestimated your own species' response capabilities," Hernandez added pointedly. The footage of Dr. Chen risking his life to protect alien eggs was already spreading across the station's networks and beyond. The image of the human collapsing, while still carefully supporting the fragile container, had become unexpectedly powerful, a predator species sacrificing itself to protect the offspring of others. The Grand Assembly Hall of Eternal Harmony was filled to capacity, with representatives from all 500 member species present either physically or via holographic projection. The week-long summit was drawing to a close, and the final session would determine humanity's status within the galactic community. Ambassador Sarah Reyes stood with her team, no longer isolated from the other delegates. In the days following the tests, perceptions had shifted dramatically. Aliens still maintained a respectful distance, but the quality of that distance had changed, from fear to something closer to deference. High Counselor Vexalia activated the central days, her iridescent skin glowing with formal patterns. "This assembly is called to order for its final deliberation. Before us is the matter of Earth's classification and status within the Concordat." The chamber fell silent as Vexalia continued. Initial assessment classified humans as predator sentients, a designation that would have limited their participation in galactic affairs and restricted their movement between systems. Commander Jackson tensed slightly, but Sarah placed a calming hand on her arm. However, Vexalia's voice resonated through the chamber. "Recent events have necessitated a reassessment. The Evaluation Committee has created a new classification, unprecedented in our 10,000 years of interstellar cooperation." The display behind her illuminated with a new symbol, a circular design containing elements of protection and strength. "Earth is hereby classified as a guardian species," Vexalia announced. beings whose evolutionary path as predators has been channeled not toward dominance, but protection. Their physical capabilities, problem-solving adaptability, and persistence traits, though initially concerning, represent valuable assets to galactic stability when guided by their demonstrated ethical framework. Murmurs spread through the assembly as the implications became clear. As such, Vexalia continued, humans are granted full diplomatic recognition with standard trade and transit rights. Additionally, she paused, her compound eyes focusing directly on Sarah. Earth is invited to join the Galactic Defense Initiative, a position never before offered to a newly contacted world. Professor Hernandez leaned closer to Sarah. That's their strategic defense alliance. They're asking us to help protect them. The irony isn't lost on me, Sarah whispered back, before stepping forward to address the assembly. On behalf of Earth, we accept both the classification and the responsibilities it entails, she stated formally. Humanity has long dreamed of finding our place among the stars. We never imagined that place would be as guardians, but perhaps that role suits us better than we knew. As the session concluded, delegates who had initially avoided the humans now approached them, particularly representatives from smaller worlds with limited defenses or those situated near contested regions. A diminutive furred delegate from a mineral-rich world under constant threat from resource pirates pressed a ceremonial artifact into Sarah's hands. My people would welcome human protection, the being said softly. Our ancestors evolved to hide, not fight. Perhaps your ancestors' path has its advantages. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, they gathered at their ship's viewport for a final view of eternal harmony. To their surprise, hundreds of vessels from various worlds had illuminated their exterior lights in parallel formations, leading away from the station, creating brilliant pathways through space. What is this? Dr. Chen asked a passing Elari technician. The path of respect, the technician explained, voice tinged with awe. A tradition reserved for species considered essential to galactic stability. It has not been performed in 7 generations. Commander Jackson smiled as she initiated launch preparations. So we came to a peace summit and terrified the galaxy, only to end up as its designated protectors. Not exactly what we expected for first contact. Ambassador Reyes watched the glowing vessels guide their departure route. Perhaps this is exactly what both we and they needed. They feared the predator, but they needed the guardian. She turned to her team with renewed purpose. Our journey has just begun. Let's show the galaxy that their trust is well placed. As the Earth ship accelerated away from eternal harmony, the humans were unaware that their classification as guardian species would reshape galactic politics for millennia to come, creating a new era where the most unlikely diplomats, the predators from Earth, would become the cornerstone of lasting peace among the stars.